Is there an optimal takeoff speed?
Optimal takeoff speed. There's the speed that we rotate at, which is 60 knots, which is about 70 miles an hour. And that is where you might not necessarily have enough lift to get off the ground, but it's where you want to get your nose gear off the ground and angled up. So the bigger the plane, the longer you'll stay rotated with your main gear on the ground and not actually flying it. So like when I was traveling to Australia, I was on the A380. It'll rotate and then literally sit there like this on the runway before it has enough lift to take off for about a mile.
Wow. 142.4 Marshfield.
And then the way I pick altitudes is since we're traveling to the west, since west coast is best coast, you pick an even altitude. So it'll be 4,000 feet plus 500. And that's so you keep planes that are going in opposite directions away from each other. Another little good tidbit people don't know, like about commercial travel too, is when your ears pop?
Yep.
Yeah.
So like obviously the pressure in the big aircraft is being controlled by the aircraft, not by the altitude, because it's pressurized. But the same principles apply. It's about the vertical speed. It's about how quickly that pressure is changing, right? So since I have lots of power here, if I just wanted to climb a little bit faster, or descend faster too, it changes the pressures in your ear faster. So that was, do you feel yours pop? Mine did.
Yeah,
A little
mine
bit.
did.
Yep.
I've flown so often that I don't feel it anymore. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
I've gotten good at using that little muscle that's there to trigger it.
Yep.
Yeah.
just like somewhere near TMJ.
Yep.
Kind of a clench.
And what it is about 700 feet per minute
Bradley,
is what triggers
20
that.
at 10,000 direct glide. Kronos 20, Bradley.
So right there I just went up to 1,000 feet per minute, so your ears might pop a little bit.
Kronos 20.
So is this just from you playing around with flying, or just...
Oh, knowing what it is?
Yep.
It's like it's a rule of thumb, but
Okay.
yeah, a little bit of that too, because I like keeping my passengers comfortable and happy.
I guess that's what's important here, isn't it?
I think it's incredibly important. There's a lot of pilots out there that are really, they try to be macho men, they try to scare their passengers.
8285 Bravo contact.
Can't stand that.
With that being said, obviously you're very well trained, but exactly how hard is it to get a pilot license, and are there people out there that really shouldn't be flying, that just like get the license because it's...
I think that most of the people, if there's anybody out there that shouldn't be flying, it's usually people that have had their license probably for years and years, and it's been so long since they've been with an instructor that they've forgotten it and they just kind of go and do whatever.
Okay. But would you say it's hard to get a license?
It is decently hard.
It requires a lot of training?
It's appropriately hard is what I tell people.
Okay. That makes sense.
If you're focused and determined to do it, it's not too hard at all. There's just a lot to memorize and a lot to learn how to do. And then there's that's for the practical exam, or for the written exam. When you go do that, you take a big test. And there's an interview that goes on with you and your instructor. You sit down for an hour or so, and he just drills you with questions, trying to find something that you don't know. And when you pass that, then you go do your practical, which is you go take him flying. You treat him like your first passenger, actually. So you give him a briefing, you tell him all the safety stuff too, so they know that you are licensed to take other people flying and they're going to be safe with you.
That's really interesting. How old were you when you first got licensed?
I was a solo pilot for a few years, which just means I could fly myself and just nobody else. And then I just got my license officially over this last summer.
Okay. What are the main differences between being a solo pilot and I guess a passenger pilot or whatever?
It's about the radius that you can fly away from your home airport.
Okay.
And about how attached you are to your instructor. You have to let him know where you're going to go, and he says, oh, okay, yeah, you're fine. And that's just mostly to safeguard against people just flying wherever they want anytime and nobody being responsible for you.
Oh, okay.
Because when I was a solo pilot, if I said to my instructor, hey, I'm going to go to Logan today, he would have said, oh, no, I don't think you should do that. I mean, he may have let me, actually, but... so, it's about making sure somebody's responsible.
So do you remember your first official passenger, your first official real passenger?
It was over the summer, yeah. It was a few days later. It was Preston, actually.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah, I flew up to Nashua. He was working there over the summer. Grabbed Preston.
Was he scared?
Not too much. Preston's a pretty level-headed guy.
Were you scared?
Were you scared?
Not too much. No, once you do that you have 40 hours of training.
Oh, it's a lot. So you had a lot under your belt then.
You do 40 hours of training, and you do enough solo stuff that you're pretty confident that you're going to remain focused keep vigilant, looking out for other aircraft, not have any, always know what's going on with your, with the control towers, not really have any like weird questions that you're not going to be able to answer.
500, contact Boston approach 124.4.
Okay, we're looking at
To me, that was the hardest part, was getting comfortable talking to air traffic control.
That would be difficult. Okay, so since there's risks involved and stuff, do pilots have to be trained in any sort of first aid safety?
No first aid safety. You're expected to know how to take care of yourself if you like have to, land in the frozen tundra.
Yeah.
And you carry safety equipment for that. Most of the safety stuff is, of course, like everything that can possibly go wrong with your aircraft, including training for, you frequently train for engine failure. And what your instructor...
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, engine failure, would you say that's the most likely malfunction?
There's, of course, a well-compiled list of what's most likely to kill you. And one of the top ones is fuel exhaustion.
Oh, okay.
I can't believe it. It's just that people go flying without enough fuel to get where they're going.
Oh, well, that's just one of those dumb mistakes, I guess.
Or they get stuck in weather and they get stuck circling. That's another common one. Is it's called VMC to IMC, which is flying from visual conditions into like total whiteout conditions.
Oh, that'd be terrifying.
When you're not trained for it. But you're trained. What you do with your instructor all the time is you'll be just flying along like this, and you'll be looking out the window like this, and he grabs the throttle, knocks it down, and goes, "What you gonna do?" And you immediately go to your best glide speed, pitch for that glide speed, start looking, figure out where you're gonna land. Then if you have time, then go through your checklists and try to restart the engine. And if it's bad and you're near some controlled airspace, then start talking to somebody and say, "This is what's going on. I'm going to end up over here. Come look for me," or something. Or if you're near an airport too, just go right for it. And that's one thing you practice is you saw the people at the at Minuteman where we just were going in the pattern and just practicing around in a circle. Is make sure you're always close enough to the airport that if you do have a failure when you're in the pattern, you can always glide down to that airport. And I can show you too what a glide is like if we want to lose a little bit of altitude before we come into Worcester. You just bring the power back. So this is like what your instructor would do, is just bring the power back on you. And it's like, oh, the engine's contributing nothing to me right now. So we're going to pitch forward. I'll do like a left 360 here or something. And the best glide speed, and I have it on, right here, we can go V speeds, VG, 76 knots, in case you didn't have it memorized for the aircraft. So there's roughly 76 knots right there. And then I'm going to just start looking around and figure out where I'm going to go. See, there's nothing dramatic about it. Planes don't drop out of the sky. They want to fly. They keep flying. So you can figure out where you're going to go. You're going to pick a highway. You want to land on the highway. You want to pick a field. Preferably you want to go to a field so you don't cause traffic delays or something. But if that's your best option, then go for that road.
Southwest 144 Bradley, departure radar contact, climb maintain 10,000.
So before you mentioned that you could feel... Okay.
Yeah.
One sec. Anyways. So you could feel when you're adjusting your pitch, the pullback. So you just adjusted the pitch down. How hard are you pulling right now?
Feel free to take hold. Ready?
Yep.
Oh. Feel like 5 pounds?
Chronos 20,
less than that, maybe 3, 4?
125.35.
And then you can feel, too, you feel along with me while we do this. Since we're going a little lower speed, it takes a little bit more control input to do what we want to do, just because there's less air flowing over the wings, so you have less control authority.
How many hours on a simulator have you put in before you start solo flights?
Oh, the simulator, hundreds. If you have a good simulator setup, it's actually a great way to learn. Make sure you talk to somebody like me. I've done that for a number of people who email me or go on my website and talk about the best add-ons to get. One of the best ones, I have to say, other than having like a good set of controls, you can do it with a joystick. I had it with a joystick. As long as it's got rudder control, you're good. And probably the most important thing, I say, is actually a head tracker. So like Track IR is what it's called. And it's a hat that you wear with some reflectors on it. And that way when you turn your head like that, the camera in the game turns. So that way, since visual flying, which is the first thing you're going to learn how to do, is so dependent on like what you're looking at outside your window, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be stuck in this rigid view looking out the front of the plane. That's more for like, IFR, like if you were going to be a commercial jet pilot. and just get comfortable looking around and spotting things outside the aircraft, choosing someplace to land in an emergency, picking off 45s to the runway when you're in a pattern.
So a two-part question.
Yeah.
What's most important bit of advice you give to someone that would be looking to get their license?
Contact West Tower 118.9.
Take it slow if you're afraid of the money.
Take care.
And what's going to happen, I flew for years just taking occasional lessons, because money is everybody's problem. And what you can do is just slowly do it, and then there will become a point when you're looking at the cost of continuing to fly with an instructor and renting an airplane, where you say, okay, time to go. Boom, just push it. That's the final, last maybe 10 hours of your training. Push it, go.
2110 Juliet Bradley,
Get your license.
Is there any requirement to have a certain amount of hours per year? Like if you wait 5 years, you don't have to redo hours, do you?
You don't have to redo hours. Hours always stick with you in your logbook. The only thing that can deteriorate on you like that is if you are a solo pilot, you have a solo certificate. And that does run out every so often, and your instructor has to renew it.
Makes sense. Second part of the question, what is your most important advice for a first-time pilot? So they just gotten their license, they're doing their first set of solo flights.
Make sure, I gotta say, a first set of solo flights, you've had the training, you're all set, you can do it. Even though there's no instructor next to you, you can remain vigilant yourself. If you need to write yourself sticky notes and put them on the glare shield or keep them on your knee board, go ahead and do it, whatever keeps you safe. And beyond that, for your first real set of flights with passengers, maybe don't fill up the plane the first time. You're still getting used to how your plane performs, how much runway you need to take off and land. Take your best friend flying that you really trust. That way you can tell them if something goes wrong, you know, they're not going to freak out, they're not going to start accusing you of anything, they're going to be there to help you. Maybe a family member too. Good questions. Thanks so much. You guys have been great today.
So you hear a lot about, in movies, media, about restricted airspace. Is there anything regarding that around major cities?
Oh yeah, I mean if we zoom out here on the GPS, you see those big rings right there around Boston?
Yep.
And around Providence?
I do.
This is Class B airspace, that's Class C airspace, which is B is the most restrictive, and then down to C. And then if you zoom into Worcester, here's Class D airspace, which just means that there's a control tower there. And before I enter that, I need to have established two-way communication with them. So there's different things for each of the different airspaces. So with Worcester, if I say, Worcester Tower, Warrior 8027 Foxtrot, just looking to get his attention, and he goes, 27 Foxtrot, stand by, that's enough, and I can enter. Versus Class C and D airspace, actually I think C is also just established contact, and then Class B airspace, which is near Boston, which you can go through anytime you want to go somewhere. Just plan for it, and you get over there, and they either have to give you the magic words and say you are cleared into the Class Bravo airspace, and they'll give you an altitude to stay at and a direction to fly. Or they might say, we're too busy right now, sorry, you can hold for 5 minutes and we'll let you know, or go around. And then you just plan accordingly and go around. And in terms of like military restricted and like really restricted airspace, there's only one near us, which we were actually right near. Do you see this little tiny green one up there? That is Fort Devens Air Force Base, which is a decommissioned Air Force base. It's now used for like police training, police academy. And it's just a little, I think it's only on like Saturdays from like 9 to noon or something. I don't know even what it's for. Before we head back to Worcester, you want to do like a couple of fun maneuvers, like do some turns?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to ask you what do you enjoy when you're doing solo flight?
Oh, well, this is always kind of fun. So we'll do a turn to the left, a little steep turn to the left. So this is like something you would do when you're training. There's maneuvers you have to demonstrate for your examiner, and this is one of them. You got to do a steep turn to the left, 45 degrees, go right back in it to the right, and then maintain the same altitude and same airspeed the whole time. And keep your focus outside too. Ready?
Go for it.
And we can use this as clearing turns too to make sure there's no traffic around us before we do any other maneuvers. Fuel pump and landing light come on, so you got best visibility. Mixture's full rich. Ready? Always add a little bit of power because you're going to lose some lift.
Roger. Fly heading 280 vector iron.
Feel the G-forces?
Oh yeah, I do.
That's about 1.5 Gs.
Fly heading 280 vector for.
But note how everything stays level in the cockpit. That's because of this right here. This instrument right here I'm looking for, my turn and slip indicator, that's literally just a level.
Yeah.
And I'm keeping the ball centered.
That's so cool.
And that tells me what to do with my rudder pedals.
3396, contact Boston.
And I'm looking for 3,000 feet.
2.65.
Looking around for traffic. We were heading south, so as soon as you hit that southerly heading, boom, roll out, go into the next one.
So this is a stunt. This isn't a stunt plane by any means, but
No.
have you tried any riskier maneuvers just for fun?
60-degree banks bring your G-force up to 2 Gs.
Would you be willing to try that with passengers?
Skyhawk 519 or 52, Bradley approach.
There's 60.
Uh-huh. Ooh, I'm really thinking now. Got a much better view as well.
And November 952, what was the destination?
And roll out in that southerly heading, bring the power back a little bit.
November 952, state
Very nice.
destination again.
I'm really noticing all the schools in the area now.
There's a lot of them.
Massachusetts has the most schools per capita, but from an aerial view, you get a nice perspective.
And then now we've done our clearing turns, I don't see anybody in the area.
Sierra Romeo, contact Boston approach 133.0.
Bring the power back, put the car keyed in. So we're going to do a stall, which is basically dropping out of the sky. So this is when we don't have enough airspeed left to fly. And this airplane is very tame. It wants to fly. So you put in flaps and you pretend like you're landing. And this is what you demonstrate to the instructor. You say, I'm going to land here, right? But I'm just losing power and I'm not going to have enough to make it to the runway, but I'm not really paying attention. So it's going to get real slow.
Yep, there it is.
Right?
Yep.
And then just recover.
Sure, 5660.
That was so cool.
And when you're demonstrating that for your license, you have to do it within a certain number of feet. So it's like as if you were close down to the runway and you weren't going to make it. Can you recover before you would have hit the ground? Stall is definitely fun.
What sort of situation would you be in? Are you planning to go into a stall unintentionally?
Like I just described, like you were heading down to the runway and you just weren't really paying attention too much and your airspeed's getting low while you're worrying about maybe some other traffic or something. S-turns is another fun maneuver that you have to demonstrate. Like if you pick some power lines like this or a road, and you do this, right? And you do an S-turn, and it's mostly to get you to be cautious of the wind. So you know how sharp your turns have to be to make a perfect S shape along that obstacle, right? So as soon as you come perpendicular to it here, boom, go right into the other one. And let's say the wind was like heavier blowing this direction, I'd have to make this turn tighter so I don't get blown away from it, right?
Cessna 51952, radar contact 5 miles northwest of Westover, Bradley altimeter 29996.
What are the worst conditions you've flown in?
Ooh, there was a pretty gross day. Eric was actually flying. He was in another plane. We were leaving the flight academy, and we were heading over to Worcester to get some fuel. The pumps weren't working at the time, and it was just gross. It was like low clouds and rainy and disgusting. And it was only the short hop, so we weren't really worried about it. But we got up there, and we just looked at it and we're like, this is grody, and just headed back for the day.
So what scares you more, storms, turbulence and high winds, or low visibility?
For one, turbulence doesn't scare us much at all. Turbulence is it's proportional to your surface area, right? So whatever you feel in the bigger plane is actually what you feel here too. And it doesn't really scare you because only the really nasty turbulence is ever going to do anything for you. Airplanes are meant to handle it. It can get really bumpy sometimes. Storms, pretty easy to avoid, especially during the summer. VFR to IMC is probably the worst when you're not expecting it and it just all of a sudden clouds over for like no good reason.
What was that what was that acronym you said?
VFR to VMC to IMC. Visual meteorological conditions to instrument meteorological conditions.
I see.
And it's a top killer of pilots.
Oh.
So you check the weather beforehand, you know what's going on. And it's not too bad. Here in Massachusetts, the weather doesn't really change that quickly, but like in Melbourne, when I was in Australia and flying down there, every 20 minutes would be different weather. Unbelievable.
Florida would be like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mr. Tower information, Charlie, 1854 Zulu, wind 270 at 11, visibility 10, sky clear, altitude dew point minus 8, altimeter 292. Expect the ILS or visual approach runway 29. Hazardous weather emit Sierra Tango in Zulu in effect for mountain obscurations, moderate turbulence, moderate icing. Further information available on high wall flight watcher flight service frequencies. Advise on initial contact, you have Charlie.
Okay, so now we've heard all the weather and the winds, we got our updated barometric pressure, and he said Charlie. When we left, it was Zulu, so it's wrapped around the alphabet. They give you a code so they know that you have the most up-to-date information. And it's kind of funny, because I'm going to call in and then I'll tell you what they can do to trick you.
Trick you? Why would they want to trick you?
Make sure you're on your toes. All right, give me a second. Worcester Tower, Warrior 8027 Foxtrot is 8 miles to the east, inbound information, Charlie.
Warrior 8027 Foxtrot, Worcester Tower, report a 2-mile final, runway 29.
Report a 2-mile final for 29er 8027 Foxtrot. Cool. So now we turn to match up with this line. Yeah, so what they can do, this is usually the bigger airports that do it, because they have so many planes coming through. They're allowed to do it once a day and once a day only, which is often pilots will not listen to that because they just left for a quick lunch. Like, I didn't really have to listen to it. Not much has changed. It's calm, right? There's nothing weird going on. But for all you know, they like closed a runway at the airport because a plane landed and blew out a tire. And they need to go and pick up the pieces and then inspect the runway, right? So what they'll do is when you call in and say, oh, I'm you know, inbound to land whatever, you know, and don't really mention the information, they go, oh, just verify that you have information Delta. And they go, oh yeah, sorry, I have information Delta. And they go, ah, I gotcha, it's Charlie. Yeah, sneaky, sneaky, sneaky.
Very surprised I have any service up here.
Oh yeah, it's good till about 3,500 feet, which is actually what we're exactly at. Now, since we're a little bit high for the approach, I'll demonstrate one of those maneuvers that we were talking about earlier. You asked when would you want to lose altitude, right? So right now, like if I had my throttle all the way back and I was just too high and I'm like, I'm going to miss the runway, I can slip the plane, which is, it's called side slip. So I cross control. So I'm going to push to the right with my rudder pedals and to the left with the ailerons. Ready?
Yep.
So now I'm presenting more surface area to the wind, but still traveling in the right direction, right? So what the side slip is doing is it's just producing more drag. You can feel it pushing up against you, right?
Yep.
So look at how fast I can lose airspeed if I wanted to. If I bring the power out and side slip it like this, you can drop a good 1,500 feet per minute like this and not even sweat it and never gain airspeed at all. Look, airspeed's not budging, 1,200 feet per minute descent. And then as soon as you're done, you think you have enough altitude, boop, pop it back out. It's a good way, especially if you're traveling someplace far and you're on with ATC, they'll give you vectors until a certain point and then they'll just dump you like that. And sometimes it's unfortunately close to the airport. For smaller airports that you go to, I had an air show like that. It's one of my videos where they just dumped me right next to the airport. And I didn't want to create a hassle because there's so many planes going around all day that you really want to try to avoid clogging up the airspace. So I was like, all right, we're going for it. Boom. Dropped it right in there, got on the ground, and the ground crew was like, hey, thanks for helping us out. So there's Worcester here. WPI should be coming up right there. Yep. Get some pictures. Come on.
I should get some pictures of that.
I have some good ones too if you just want to tell people. I'll present a little bit more of the... I'll get the wing out of the way for you.
No, the wing's not in the way. Don't worry about it. Trying to get the football field in shot.
Nice. Good.
Obviously, you got to get the Snapchat in there as well. So, not only can you pilot, you also mentioned something about trains. How'd that happen?
Just talking to the right people. You're on a scenic train, scenic dinner train. They're like, oh, well, you want to come up to the cab? Oh, of course I do.
Nice.
And they're like, you know how a train works? I'm like, oh yeah. Pointing all the controls, and they're like, oh, go ahead. Here, just give me 1 second. Worcester Tower, Warrior 8027 Foxtrot's on that 2-mile final for a 29er.
Warrior 27 Foxtrot, runway 29, clear to land.
Clear to land, 29er 8027 Foxtrot.
Runway 27 Foxtrot, the winds are 280 at 11.
Thank you. Car beat comes in for the power reduction. Fuel pump landing light go on. Mixture's full rich, mixture master mags. Inside the white arc, add notch of flaps. 2 notches flaps. Yeah, full flaps. Yep, windy.
Yep. Nonetheless, still smooth landing.
I had a little bit of side load on it, but I made sure that if you see the side load coming in like that, which is when the plane is shifting laterally, then you just make sure that you don't drop the weight.
427 Foxtrot, remain this frequency, turn right at taxiway Foxtrot, cross runway 33, taxi to parking.
Right on Foxtrot, cross 33 and stay with you to parking at 027 Foxtrot. Yeah, if you see you're about to land with some side load, just don't let the weight of the plane drop down. Add some power or pull back a little bit if you have the energy. Just don't let it drop, because that's a good way to do some damage to your landing gear, fold it in, or at least just loosen it up enough that might be a problem later.
If you come in with too much side load, I imagine you can flip.
Or
the wheels, do they have enough give?
Yeah, the frictions won't really get you on that one. It's easier to flip a Cessna for sure, because the center of gravity is much higher because of the wings on the top, especially with like full tanks. And what can happen to you? You always want to check your runway like that, make sure there's no other traffic coming in. Yeah, with the Cessna, it's easy, especially if you're trying to stop on a really short runway and you slam on your brakes. You can flip over the front like that. Much harder with a plane like this. But what side load's really bad for is just folding your landing gear like that. Because you can picture the forces involved. Sure.
Oh, absolutely.
You're an engineer.
That's why I asked. So, right when we touched down, I'm sure you've noticed it. There was a peculiar smell.
That was probably because I added that power at the last second, and just when you punch the throttle like that, yeah, you get a little bit of that.
It wasn't an exhaust smell. It was like a rubber smell.
Oh, it was probably from the tires. Probably the tires skidding across the runway like that. I wish that I had that one on video with the cameras on the outside. That would have been great to watch.